On today's episode, Rob Jones's PHT success story. Welcome to the podcast helping you overcome your proximal hamstring tendinopathy. This podcast is designed to help you understand this condition, learn the most effective evidence-based treatments, and of course, bust the widespread misconceptions. My name is Brodie Sharpe. I'm an online physiotherapist, recreational athlete, creator of the Run Smarter series, and a chronic proximal hamstring tendinopathy battler. Whether you are an athlete or not, this podcast will educate and empower you in taking the right steps to overcome this horrible condition. So let's give you the right knowledge along with practical takeaways in today's lesson. We have uncovered another PHT success story. Rob Jones has come out of the woods. I found him on the Facebook PHT group and he made a post saying about his success, and I reached out and said, can you share it? And so Rob is on to chat about his PHT experience. It first came about in early 2018 when training for a running race, and a whole bunch of insights, working out what doesn't work, what made it worse, and then eventually what made it better. And hopefully you can take a lot of these lessons away today and sort of implement it into your own rehab. And who knows, maybe once you start implementing these, you get significantly better, then you can reach out and we can jump on to do our own success story. I love Rob's story. You all will take so much away from this. And so let's dive in. Rob, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah, no, it's good to talk to you, and it's good to have a bit of a story to tell, to be honest.
And people always ask for success stories, so let's dive in. Maybe just introduce yourself, where you're from, and I guess what type of runner would you consider yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Rob, and I'm from a little city called Worcester, not far from Birmingham, if anybody's heard of that. I'm a 40-year-old runner. Or am, however you want to put it. Preferred distance being kind of the marathon, but I've done all sorts down to, 10K, 5K, even a bit of track stuff. And I kind of started running just to get fit, I suppose. I got to my early 30s and wasn't very fit, and then I joined the local athletics club and whatever, and got it more into the competitive side of things, really.
Nice. And I guess what's like in terms of number of marathons completed? Do you know a specific number?
So I think I've done 9 road marathons and 1 off-road marathon at the last count, I think it was. The last marathon being 2019.
And I know we're going to talk about the PHT in a second, but any other injuries in your marathon career?
Yeah, there's been a few. I've had a bit of plantar fasciitis. I can't remember if it was in my PHT side or the other side. But yeah, I've had that and a bit of IT band trouble as well. But nothing really significant. Lots of little niggles that marathon runners get, but nothing horrendously bad.
Okay, good to know. Well, cast us back to the time when these initial PHT symptoms, like the onset of symptoms, arose. What was happening at that stage, and I guess what was that experience?
Yeah, so I was kind of building up to London Marathon, and I'd entered myself into an off-road race, and I was using it as part of my training, and about halfway round, I felt a bit of a funny tug or a twang, or I'm not sure how to describe it really, in my hamstring, and it wasn't particularly bad. And I got to the end of the race, hobbled round, and if you asked me on a pain scale what it would be, I'd maybe say like a 3 out of 10 or something. And I had a bit of time off, and it felt okay, and I just continued to train on it, which I really regret now. I had London Marathon coming up, and that was really, I suppose I was almost a little bit obsessive about getting there and doing that. But things just got worse and worse from there, really. But if I'd got it treated properly and had the correct time off, then I probably wouldn't be talking to you now, I guess.
Right. And I guess you're saying that most symptoms were kind of in the middle portion of the hamstring, as it felt like a little bit of a tight strain sort of sensation.
Well, initially, yeah, it was like in the belly of the hamstring, um, but later on, it wasn't. It was definitely in the upper part, where the sit
Mm.
bones are and whatever. Definitely in the upper portion is where I had the real problem. I guess the thing I had in the belly of the hamstring and the PHT is related. I think it must be because that's the only really thing that seemed to happen that could have caused the PHT, I guess. But
Mm.
I guess I'll never know for sure. But that's kind of my gut
Yeah.
feeling.
And I struggle to really understand as well because I've seen a few cases where people have reported a hamstring muscle strain that was like they either took time off or was mismanaged, and
Yeah.
that perpetuated into the proximal hamstring tendon being irritated. And that's usually what persists. It's like the hamstring tendon is something that does linger a lot longer than, say, a muscle strain. And why that is the case, why it leads from one to the other, I'm really unsure. But I've heard a couple of cases exactly like that.
Yeah, I mean that's when it all started, and basically my symptoms from that day, um, they got worse and worse over, 3 years almost.
Mm.
So yeah, I regret not taking the proper precautions and getting the treatment that I needed really. But again, on the flip side of that is if I stopped at every niggle I had and got that looked at, I'd be seeing a physiotherapist every 5 minutes, and you'd never do any running. But you know, it's it really wasn't a significant thing to begin with.
Mm. Yeah,
It
fair
definitely
call.
grew. Yeah,
And did you make it to the London Marathon? Did you persist through the London Marathon with the hamstring issues?
yeah, I did. Yeah, so I I continued my training, and I got to the marathon. I completed that. Um, but building up to that, the symptoms kind of were different and they behaved differently, and different things happened with my hamstring. You know, the the symptoms I was having, they changed, and the hamstring behaved differently at different times. But I think maybe
What
getting
do you
to
mean
that.
by that? Like, in
So,
what way were they different?
initially it was just the first few weeks, it was just a bit of discomfort in the belly of the hamstring. Then maybe after a couple of months, I had this kind of pain or discomfort, maybe not pain, discomfort would be the right word, in the top of my hamstring at the start of a run. Now that would disappear after a mile or two, and I could complete any distance of run fine. Once it had warmed up, and I figured, oh, okay, if it's not getting worse with running, it's actually eased off and got a little bit better, so it can't be bad, right? That was my kind of feeling on it. Um, but then it progressed in the months after the marathon. I At the start of a run it would hurt. Um, the further I ran, it would get worse and worse. Sitting was worse. All the usual things really.
Mm. And was this symptoms now originating like high up in the hamstring, or was
Yeah,
this
yeah.
still like a mid belly?
No, this was all high up in the hamstring now. So
Okay.
I guess maybe a couple of months after the initial kind of belly of the hamstring issue, then it was all high up in the hamstring, top of the hamstring.
Okay.
Um,
Well, over the subsequent months of after that marathon, like you say, things slowly started getting worse. Running became a little bit more painful. Sitting became a bit more irritated. Um, can you identify any things that may have helped the condition at that stage, or any things that may have hindered your particular recovery?
certainly continue. So, um, stupidly, I basically I used to do 2 marathons a year, so I then went and did an autumn marathon, just as
Okay.
just as you would. Um, but continuing to do high mileage was in hindsight, it wasn't a good thing. I still hadn't had a diagnosis at this point, and I believed that it was like a sciatic nerve thing, or a sciatic nerve problem. Um, so I carried on with, the running, the cycling. Um, I tried periods of rest, but it actually seemed to get worse with rest, to be honest. It didn't improve at all. And then it wasn't really until I had an MRI scan that I started looking at different sort of treatments and things.
Okay. Did someone send you to get an MRI?
Um, no, so I went to my doctor, um, and I basically said, I've had this pain when I sit. You know, it's affecting me everywhere when I sleep, at meal times, everything. Because I said I think it's my sciatic nerve, and they sent me for a scan, an MRI scan, um, and then it wasn't really until I got the diagnosis that I started to take it a bit more seriously.
What did the MRI show? Can you remember?
So it showed, yeah, it showed thickening of some of the tendons, and I had a split in one of them as well. Um, I can't. I mean, a lot of the language was big boy words as I call them, and I couldn't
Understood.
understand a lot
Yep.
of it. Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, there was a thickening of the tendon and a split in the one tendon. And I went to a physio who kind of analysed it all, and he said, "Oh, you've got quite a serious problem here." Um, but yeah, it was quite worrying at that time.
Yeah. So that was kind of like the approach to eventually seek a physio was go to your GP, get an MRI.
Yeah,
MRI
exactly.
report came back and then said, okay, probably time to start some physio.
Yeah, yeah. But the initial physio I had wasn't great. I went to see a guy who he he he's a physio for Great Britain, one of their disciplines, if you like. So he's well known, I guess, and quite well respected. But I went to see him, and I walked in there and I gave him my MRI report, and he basically said that I'd have this for the rest of my life, and I just had to manage it. He gave me two or three exercises, and basically sent me on my way, and I left fairly disheartened, to be honest.
Right. Can you remember what the exercises were?
Yeah, so he gave me like a one-legged lunge that was on a step. Sorry, not a lunge, a squat. Sorry, a squat on a
Single leg
step.
squat.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
single leg, and a single leg deadlift as well was one. And
Okay.
and for where I was in my kind of rehab, they were way too advanced for me. Like they were just causing quite big flare-ups. They were just too aggressive, and I basically just couldn't handle them, and so that didn't really work. Um, so yeah, that was a bit of a gutter, to be honest.
And was it just the one session with that? Like usually, if you say you see like a pretty renowned specialist kind of physio, I've seen a lot of times it's just a one session off you go type of thing. Was that the case for you?
Well, with this physio, it was, yeah. I mean, I saw so many different people in different physios, but with this particular physio, yeah, it was just the one session. He didn't really seem like he could help me, and so there was no real reason to go back. But I went and saw about three other physios. I went and saw a chiropractor, and two osteopaths in total. So I saw the whole
Okay.
caboose.
Were you gaining any information or gaining any helpful resources to manage your recovery?
So initially no, but then um, at the start of last year, I went and saw a physio who kind of got me on my way. She gave me a bit of a rehab program with some structure, and started my loading exercises like at a really low level. Like I was doing a holding a hamstring bridge for like 5 seconds, which was, real low level stuff, I guess. But that's what I needed to do. Like when she gave me those exercises, I was thinking, well, what's this going to do? But that was the level I was at realistically. So yeah, she gave me various other exercises, and then stressed like the importance of the 24-hour rule, as I call it. And I'm sure when
I call it that as well.
yeah, maybe that's where I've got it from then. Yeah, listening to your podcast. Yeah. So yeah, if the irritation's gone within 24 hours, then it's fine. And actually for me, I found it important to irritate the tendon just slightly. Um, but only so as the next day the irritation was gone, and that kind of, I went through a phase of not irritating the tendon at all. As soon as I felt anything, I'd stop. If I was on a run and I felt any little niggle or whatever, I'd stop running, I'd stop what I was doing. But just to go on that little bit more and just cause a little bit of a stir was, I found to be a good thing in the long term.
Yeah. Well, that's why the 24-hour rule and those pain rules that we sort of advise is there in the first place, because the job is to try and find
Yeah.
that sweet spot of adaptation. And sometimes pain-free exercises and pain-free activities underloading you is actually doing you a disservice.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas a little bit of discomfort, which you've sort of described, you sort of managed to kick on with your rehab and actually see progress once you started like provoking it a little bit, and then provide the rest of the pain rules were abided by.
Yeah, once I started provoking it, as you say, that's when I kind of started to see the biggest improvements, I guess. Like it wasn't very nice to do because you felt like you were maybe taking steps back, but it definitely helped. Just to, I'm not talking like, go on a 10-mile run and so you can't walk for 2 weeks and just a little flare up is, that only lasts, 24 hours was a good thing for me anyway.
Yeah, great. And so what would you progress towards? What sort of exercises, once you sort of went beyond the bridges and decide to provoke things further, what did that look like?
Yeah, so bridges, and then eventually I moved on to deadlifts just at home, and I eventually managed to do squats. I had to do kind of squats, but not in a full range of movement, if you like, because I couldn't. But eventually, I managed to get down so my thighs were parallel to the ground. Um, and then I think back in around December, January, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you were stressing the importance of your rehab being progressive, and I got to a stage where I was doing all these squats and deadlifts, but I was doing the same amount every day, and I was doing them at home with the same weights. And that's when I kind of took my rehab to the gym, started using the weights there, squatting using a bar and heavier weights, and deadlifts with bigger weight, and that's when I really started to see like better progress.
Yeah, well done. Well done for taking that step.
Yeah.
At its worst, what were symptoms like? Like, did you have to give up running completely? What was
Yeah.
like your sitting symptoms like? What did that pathology progress into?
So yeah, sitting symptoms were fairly bad. Like I could maybe manage 2 minutes of sitting, and then it would start really aching. Driving was not good. Long drives were horrendous. I used to stop at like every motorway service station just to get a bit of a break. It used to drive my wife mad. Um, but yeah, the sitting wasn't great. Sorry, I've forgotten the second part of the question.
Just like how it was progressing, how much level of activity you were
Oh
doing in
yeah,
terms of
yeah,
like
yeah.
running volumes, that stuff.
Sorry, yeah. So I basically, at its worst, I stopped running for around 18 months, and became a couch potato, uh, but a lying down one because I couldn't really sit. Um, and yeah, I wasn't doing anything, and that was kind of in lockdown, I guess. We had lockdown over here. When would it have been? mid 2019, 2020. So yeah, I didn't really do anything. Sleeping was bad. I couldn't really lie on my side. That was uncomfortable. Whether that was related, I don't know. But I also had problems with kind of my quads as well. They seemed to be. I seemed to have like what felt like a permanent groin strain in both sides.
Right.
Yeah, and my quads would become like fatigued really easily. Now I don't know if that was related or not, but after having that as well for a year or whatever, that seems to have cleared up too. So I'm guessing that was, somehow connected.
Okay. So I guess from initially getting your symptoms before that marathon to then starting to do some home-based exercises, how long had you had the PHT for, just as a like
So,
average?
yeah, so it, it it would have been around 2 years. I mean, I had made attempts to do exercises before, and I'd do stuff on YouTube, and I'd Google certain things, but often it was the wrong advice, and I wouldn't keep the exercises going very long. I'd maybe do them 3 or 4 times, or I wasn't really aware of the importance of loading the tendon. I was always under the impression that, oh, if I rest, it's just like a broken bone. It'll repair itself, which isn't the case. And so I was never really religiously doing the exercises until kind of early last year.
Okay. And you mentioned progressing towards getting some weights, doing some bridges, you mentioned squats, you mentioned deadlifts.
Yeah.
Anything else in your repertoire when you're at home?
So I would do a single leg bridge, which I would hold, um, and I would do kind of hamstring curls using a resistance band.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, just mostly isometric. Oh, actually, sorry. As well, I do a Nordic hamstring curl with my,
Oh,
but that was more of an advanced. That wasn't an initial exercise. That was kind of towards the latter part of my home rehab. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Going through that routine, like how often throughout the week would you do them? How many times would you complete it, that particular routine?
yeah. So I tried to do it 4 or 5 times a week. Um, tried to do it for which was tough. It was trying to fit it in around things, and it got to the point as well with the home routine where I was doing like I, I- I'd up the reps so high. I was doing like 90 squats and 70 deadlifts, but they were just body weight. The deadlifts were with minimal weight, and the squats were body weight. So there was no real trouble doing them eventually. I mean, I know that sounds like a lot, but I built up to that, and eventually they weren't challenging, which was why my kind of progress plateaued, I think.
Mm. Well, the first time I heard about you was actually replying to one of my posts on a Q&A episode asking for questions. And you did mention that your home exercises saw a plateau in your
Yeah,
recovery. And it wasn't until things really kick-started that once you got into the gym and started doing some heavier stuff. Um,
yeah,
if you can remember, I guess, where did it plateau to? So what sort of improvements did you see just with your home-based exercises?
yeah. So I was able to start run walking, and sitting was definitely improving. Um, but I was definitely still having trouble for sitting, long periods, and I don't think I could have run for for any length of time really. I mean, but generally, it definitely improved. Um, but I just yeah, I just feel like the gym really got things kind of going. I mean, I did go to the gym when I got my diagnosis, and after I saw the physio that told me he couldn't do anything for me, I googled PHT treatments, and found like squats, deadlifts, and I went to the gym and just absolutely beasted myself on everything. And then my tendon didn't thank me for it because it just wasn't the right, I wasn't at that stage at all. So, but yeah, it's I saw good improvements, but in regards to getting back to running and running a marathon again, I knew I kind of needed to do a bit more.
It's like when I talk to people jumping on like the injury chats that I offer, it's very common for someone to, because not everyone that develops PHT is an athlete.
Yeah.
So not a lot of them will have a gym membership or weights at home or gym equipment, and they sort of ask like, what can I do with no equipment? I always say to them, like, you're limiting yourself quite a lot. You're only just giving yourself a ceiling in terms of the how much you can progress and how much improvement you can see, because tendons do want that slow heavy load. And I guess your story is a perfect example of really doing well strength wise at home, the 70 squats,
Yeah.
90 squats or deadlifts and that sort of stuff. So you've progressed quite a lot, but still not seeing a big improvement compared to what athletic endeavors you have.
Mm,
Like your ambitions are marathons, so your requirements need to be quite substantial, and the weights and exercises that you were doing at home just wouldn't suffice. It gets you to a certain point,
that's it.
but just wouldn't take you to that final stage. So it's interesting that like that story and that particular those particulars kind of lay out. And when you got to the gym, what changes did you make? So in terms of weight and repetitions and how frequently you're doing it throughout the week, how did that change?
Yeah. So in the initial stages, I took it steady. I'd sit on the hamstring curl machine and I'd think, well, I don't want to, absolutely destroy myself on this. I don't want to set myself back. So I took it steady. I can't remember exact weights of what I did, but I started at something that I thought was was comfortable but manageable. And
Mm-hmm.
the same, I guess, with the squats and the deadlifts. I didn't do what I thought I could lift. I did a bit less, and I went from doing 90 to doing three lots of eight, as you've suggested, and building that up. But I found the three lots of eight with some weight a lot more challenging than doing 90 just body weight squats. Um, and
There you go.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. Um, and I can't remember what I started on exactly squat wise, but I've built that up over time, and I'm now squatting 50k. I did four lots of 12 the day before yesterday, so I've no idea if that's good in terms of a 40-year-old male or whatever, but I'm not bothered, and I'm ready to
Yeah.
up it a bit and add a bit more weight on that now.
Yep. That's substantial. It'd be close to what, like 70, 80% of your body weight, and
Yeah,
squatting 4 sets of that's pretty good.
yeah.
So I think when you're talking about the hamstring curl machine, are you talking about the one where you're facing face down, or the seated one
No,
when you're
so the seated
sitting?
one, which I know people have a bit of trouble with because of the compression and whatever else, but yeah, it's the seated one. So I was always a bit wary of that, but it's it's been okay, luckily. I initially I did get a little bit of discomfort using it, but never a flare up or anything that caused me any problems. So
Mm-hmm.
and that even the little discomfort I used to get now is fine, and I've managed to up the weight on that a fair bit now. So that's good as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you following the same particular approach of irritating it just a little bit and then paying attention to it afterwards when you're in the gym?
Yeah, yeah. So just keeping an eye on it on everything really. You know, it when I was doing my squats and whatever, I wasn't going out of my way to irritate it because I was already doing you know the weight with the squats and with the deadlifts and so initially I just took it cagely, but I found that they didn't become irritated really with the gym work. Um, and I actually found that some days I'd go to the gym and I'd think, should I be doing this? My tendon doesn't feel 100% here. Should I do this? And then it would actually improve for doing the exercises. Like, so, I come out with the tendon feeling better and with no flare up. So that was a bit strange, but I'm not complaining. That was a pretty good thing.
Yeah, it can get to that stage. Like we know that slow, heavy load or like loaded exercises has a benefit, like an immediate benefit of a what we call
Yeah.
analgesic effect. If you do have a bit of discomfort, those heavy exercises tend to settle down pain for some, not for everyone,
Mm.
but that's probably what you're experiencing every time you went into the gym.
Yeah.
And how about the running? Was that building up alongside your gym program?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got a little bit distracted because I'd also started spin classes at the gym and I was doing my loading and the running was now taking a bit of a back seat. But then I thought, well, I need to get my running kick started because that's kind of my end goal. Um, and so, yeah, that's been improving. I started run walking kind of the end of last year. Just 1 minute walk, 1 minute run. Um, and it's the same thing. There was definitely discomfort at times in the tendon when I was doing that. But as long as it was gone the next day, then I was just progressing that further and further. Um, and I've kept progressing up until just recently.
How long's it been now? How long have you maintained this gym routine?
So do you mean with the weights or the loading and
Just like in general, from when you first jumped into the gym to today, like how long have you been spending in the gym doing this routine?
so since January really. I mean I have been doing
Hmm.
spin classes for a while now, but I never really considered using the gym for my rehab. I was never really ready for it, but I've been doing spin for about 18 months, but in terms of the loading and the exercises and the weights in the gym since January.
I was going to say, what would symptoms be like currently? Like, so what sort of stuff are you facing in terms of running, sitting, exercises?
Yeah, so things at the moment are really really kind of good. I recently sat for kind of 4 hours on a flight with no issue. I went to see a cricket game also in one of those hard plastic chairs they have in the stadiums, and I sat on that for like 4 hours. Um, well, I'd say 4 hours. There was a couple of mandatory runs to the bar, but yeah,
Hmm. Understandable.
yeah, yeah. So there was 4 hours on one of those hideous chairs, which I thought, this is not going to go well. But to my surprise, just it was good. Um, I've recently got up to 16 miles on my long run too, which is great. So and that was with no no pain or flare up or anything. So that was really a bit of a result that I was you know pretty happy about.
Excellent. Well done. Back on your whole journey, have there been any things that you did try or maybe you were suggested or what health professionals might have prescribed to you that weren't that effective?
Yeah, so I did have shockwave. I had two lots of four sessions of shockwave, um, which I don't feel like they helped at all. I feel like they really irritated the tendon short term, to the point where I couldn't do my loading exercises for like a week or so. Um, but but nothing. I don't feel like they did anything for me long term. Um, I mean, I went to one physio with the intention of having PRP injections, um, but he basically told me that he'd been involved in a study with them, and they didn't. There was no evidence to suggest that they worked. So that was kind of a no go. Um,
Hmm.
but apart from those two things, not really.
Okay. Excellent. Well, sounds like you've made considerable gains. So are you still maintaining the same sort of routine in the gym, just, slowly progressing as the body feels fit?
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of scared to stop, to be honest. I mean, and I never did any strength work before I had the PHT, so you know, it might even complement my running. So it can only
Yeah.
it can only be a good thing. So I think I'll
Yep.
I'll carry on regardless. And yeah, I'm I'm gonna go to the gym tomorrow, I guess, because I need to get another session in this week. So yeah,
Hmm.
tomorrow will be gym day.
You mentioned squats, deadlifts, seated hamstring curl. Is there anything else relative to your rehab?
Um, I do get on the leg press. Um, I like the leg press, and what else do I do? I have tried some hip thrusts as well, and also I've done some walking lunges with some dumbbells.
Hmm.
I usually do those or split squats. I'm not really sure which of those is more beneficial, so I tend to alternate them.
Yep.
But yeah, something that gets a bit of flexion at the hip and some compression with a bit of weight. And I struggled to do squats for a long time. Sorry, lunges for a long time. Um, so yeah, to be doing those with weight is that feels good.
Yeah, you're definitely going to become a strong runner with these sort of exercises.
Yeah.
The only thing you're missing is essentially calf raises, and that you tick off all the strength exercises I'd like to see for a
Okay,
runner.
yeah, maybe I can add those in. I mean, I do get on the leg extension machine, which is a quad machine. So
Hmm.
I've got a healthy quad. So yeah, maybe just to get on the calves and then I'll be complete.
Yeah, ticking all the boxes. All right, mate. Well done. Well, congratulations to, I guess, take the initiative to start the gym membership and actually, I know it seems a bit daunting for some people to start a new routine, new gym. What do the exercises look like? What are the, you know, it lacks the familiar sense and it can be a big hurdle for a lot of people. But well done. Well done for sticking it out, learning about it and progressing and seeing the good results. It seems like it's been a game changer for you.
Yeah, that's yeah. Thank you. I mean, I still get a bit, when I go over to the squat rack, I'm still a bit nervous, and if there's, some bodybuilding guy in there with, I do get a bit. I'll wait until he's gone before I get in there, but I always make sure it gets done. So
It's unfortunate that it's such a intimidating
yeah,
environment for some people, and sometimes it's a bit ego driven for some big bodybuilders that go there. But a conversation for another day. Any
yeah,
final takeaways or final pieces of advice that you might have for someone who does have PHT and is struggling with their rehab?
yeah. So what I would say is, the physio that helped me the most, she suggested that I keep a diary of my rehab. And at the time, I thought, oh, I'm not sure about this. But I actually wrote things down, like what I was doing in terms of exercises, and then later on in terms of my runs. Um, and because progress can seem quite slow, it, if you keep a diary of it, you can look back and, sometimes I would have thought, oh, I'm not getting anywhere here. I'm still on these squats and I'm only doing this many or whatever. But I'd look back and 4 weeks later, I'd see that I was doing significantly less. But I'd just forgotten because, you're doing so many exercises and time seems to go so slowly that you just forget where you
Mm.
are. So I think it's definitely worth keeping a diary of what you've done. And with the running, like if I completed a 3 mile run, I'll maybe have a little bit of irritation at the end, but I might see that 3 weeks earlier I'd only done a 1 mile run and that was irritated at the end. So, I think you get a better idea of where you're at, and it can be demoralizing if you think you're not making progress, especially if you are.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to identify long term trends.
Yeah,
I've seen tons of people who are just saying, I'm not getting anywhere. And you say, well, hang on, look back 4 weeks ago. Um, yes, you're probably lifting the same amount, but look at your symptoms. Look at how much
exactly.
you can tolerate your sitting now.
Mm.
How sore it is in the morning compared to how it was. Like those sort of things won't be picked up unless you are writing things down and identifying that long term trend. So that's a good tip. Any other final takeaways?
Yeah, so I would say just I made this mistake several times, but I'd say when you get your exercises, find the exercises that are right for where you are in your rehab. So I mentioned at one point I dived in and went to the gym and hit the gym, and I just wasn't, my tendon wasn't ready for it whatsoever, and it just didn't get me anywhere. So, if you need to start with isometrics or whatever it might be, then do that, but don't just jump straight in at the deep end and you know get on the deadlifts and with the, I don't know, 80 kg and be smashing those out, if you're not
Yeah.
ready for it, because it didn't work for me anyway. And it just gets demoralizing when you have a bad flare up.
Yeah, that's good advice. The amount of times I've seen people do their bodyweight bridges, see initial success, and then be told they need to start doing deadlifts, and then they do 3 sets of 10 full range of movement deadlifts and just flares them up for a week, and then they're scared for for a long time and just stick to their what they know to be safe. When in fact, deadlifts are good. It just what is the right stage for you? No one knows until you give it a try with an initial, I guess, safe amount, and then just progress from there. Yeah, great advice.
Yeah,
Anything else?
it's definitely trial and error. No, I think that's it really. That's well, I mean, you could say, if something's not working, then maybe change it up a little bit, change things around. If you're doing like I was doing exercises and just being quite safe with them, and I spent ages doing that and not really making much progress. So I eventually thought, I might just provoke the tendon a little bit, and that little change just seemed to really kickstart things off. And
Yeah,
it eventually,
well said.
yeah, eventually got me to the gym. But
Nice. Well, Rob, it's a good story. It's got a lot of little nuggets in there for a lot of PHT sufferers to take away. So well done for being a good student of the podcast, like listening to the podcast and like sort of knowing what needs to be implemented and seeking out that, taking action. And the story will help a lot of people. So thanks for coming on and sharing.
no, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks once again for listening and taking control of your rehab. If you are a runner and love learning through the podcast format, then go ahead and check out the Run Smarter podcast, hosted by me. I'll include the link along with all the other links mentioned today in the show notes. So open up your device, click on the show description, and all the links will be there waiting for you. Congratulations on paving your way forward towards an empowering, pain-free future. And remember, knowledge is power.